and welcome to the Motorsport Coaching Podcast, sponsored by Motivate Training and Management. This is a podcast where we talk to drivers and industry experts to help you maximize your performances on and off the track. Let's get started with today's show. Hi crew, welcome to episode 122 of the Motorsport Coaching Podcast. I am your host, Gwenda, founder of Motivate Training and Management. Crew, I know every week I say I'm excited for my guest, and I value each and every one of them. Today I am girlfanning over today's guest being Miss Gwenda Searle. Her story, her career, from being a race car driver to working Formula Ford all the way through to Formula One with the great man himself, Charlie Whiting. She doesn't think that her story is amazing, as you will hear throughout the episode. There are a lot of quiet moments as I'm just in awe of everything that she has achieved. She's an amazing Australian who's lived overseas. She's now back in Oz, and hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more of her. I do hope you enjoyed today's episode. Would love it if you could take a photo and post it to social media and tag us at MotivateT, or write us a review on your preferred podcast platform to go into our monthly draw to win one of our prizes. Team, we do have an upcoming webinar, 10 things you can do now to help you gain sponsorship. It's on August the 2nd, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. The links will be in today's show notes if you're interested. It is free. It will be live if you're interested in attending. If not, please register and a copy of the webinar will be sent out afterwards. Again, crew, grab a coffee, grab your tea, put those earpods on and enjoy today's episode.
Hi, Gwenda. Welcome to the Motorsport Coaching Podcast.
Hi, Belinda. Thank you for having me.
I say it every episode, but I am very excited to have you on today's show because you have such a wonderful career. We're going to pinpoint and pick things out because I want to know about everything that you have done to your career because it's so exciting. And I know there'll be lots of people interested to hear about what you've done. But tell us a little bit about you and how you got started.
Well, I think I've always had an interest in cars and motorsport because I do remember watching Bathurst when I was early teens. And my father and brother were very much into it. But being a girl, I was sort of guided away from it, and it never even entered my head to get involved in it until I was late 20s, really.
Yep.
And that was when my brother was racing in Formula Ford, and he had a go-kart too. So my first race that I ever actually went to was a Formula Ford race at Amaroo Park. And I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed being involved with my brother's racing specifically. So got out there in the pit lane and I was getting involved with timing him and comparing his times to other people's times and where they were quicker and whatever. And so that's where it started.
Oh, and have you driven yourself?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. It was a few years later. Oh, no. I never had any great ambition as a driver, but I wanted to do it for the experience. Mm-hmm. I actually wanted to be a team manager.
Yep.
And I could see at the time the best team managers were people like Frank Gardner, Ron Dennis, and Frank Williams, and they were all ex-drivers. And so I thought there's got to be something in that experience that contributes to being a good team manager. Mm-hmm. And my brother had a fun day at Eastern Creek one day. Well, it's now Sydney Motorsport Park, where all of us got to have a drive of his Formula Ford. And I really enjoyed it. And of the amateurs that were there, I was the only one who did turn one flat. And so Mike Quinn was running the cars from Phoenix Motorsport, and he said to me, a brother-sister team would go down really well with sponsors. If you ever want to do this, let me know. And I said, don't be ridiculous, I can't do that. And he said, why not? And I got to thinking about it. I thought, well, why not? So I then did a advanced driving course with Peter Finlay. Mm-hmm. It was a 2-day course at Oran Park, and in that course, you do a qualifying session and a 5-lap race. And I did a lot better in that course than I thought I would. I got Peter rated me as an A-grade driver. And during the 5-lap race, I felt like I was hooked then and there. I thought, oh, my God, I've got to do this.
Yeah.
So then I set about buying a production car to be able to go in the well, I wasn't aiming for the 12-hour at this point in time. I was just wanted to get my race license. And I had a go-kart, but I felt like I needed a roof over my head. There were too many people breaking their bones in karting. And it was before side pods were mandatory and all that. And, so I bought a Suzuki Swift.
Oh, yeah.
From Mark Brame. It was the category winning car from the 12-hour, from the Class A, and set about getting my race license. So I did that, and so that's where my racing side of it came about.
Yeah, because that just reminded me because there used to be a Suzuki Swift series.
Yes, there was.
Cool.
Yeah, so I raced against people like Jason Bugwater back then.
I can see it in my head as we're talking around, racing around now, around Oran Park.
Jason started racing about the same time as me. My brother was racing against people like Russell Ingall and Steve Richards.
And then what happened after your racing career? Did you make it to the Bathurst 12-hour?
I did. We put a proposal to Toyota because they just happened to have at that time an advertising campaign that was Toyota cars designed with women in mind. So I said, well, here's an opportunity to give credibility to your advertising campaign. Yeah. Run girls in the 12-hour. And the very next day, they called back and said, yeah, we'll do it.
Fantastic.
And it was to be Lisa Brabham and Heather Bailey. But Lisa got pregnant, so she never got to do the race. And then in the race, the car broke down after 6 hours, or at about the 6-hour mark. It broke a drive shaft. But Heather started the race and I did a double stint and absolutely loved it. But the Celica was too slow. So I bought the team's sister car, the MR2, and I raced that in the Production Car Championship that year, which was back in 1994, 95.
Oh, that's awesome. And
so
then
that was the end of my driving career. I raced up here on the Gold Coast on as support to the IndyCar race.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was fun to do a street circuit like that.
And what category was that?
It's GT again. I was actually secretary of the Australian Production Car Association at the time. So I suggested to the promoters of Indy that they have the GT cars for a 1-hour race so that we could have 2 drivers in each car with a compulsory pit stop. And it happened. We did it.
So with your hobby being motorsports, what was your career like? What were you trying? Obviously, you had that love to go into motorsports, but were you studying something else to try and get into motorsports? Or
No. I was never good at school. So I left school early. I did a business management course. It was only a 1-year course, and then I actually went to work in a legal office as a legal secretary. And so I did that for the first 2 years of my working life with no involvement in motorsport at all. But that was actually a really good grounding for how things progressed. I didn't plan out a career ever in anything. I was just working, and I mean, I grew up in a family where girls, get married and have babies, and that's it. I was actually told not to bother going to see the career guidance counsellor at school because there was no point because I was a girl. And so
lucky times has changed now.
yes. Yeah, but my parents didn't even know I was racing. When I did my first race, my parents didn't even know about it. They were in England at the time and they didn't approve. It was, I should not be doing something like that. So my brother supported me, and we sort of kept it pretty quiet until they heard about it from other friends of theirs that had seen that I was racing.
Sad, but you had that support of your brother. So did they actually ever get to see you race? Like, did they fly over and see you compete?
No. I don't think they wanted to either. My father particularly was very disapproving. No daughter of his was going to do something like that.
Yeah.
So, no, he didn't even want to talk about it.
So you obviously love the sport, which is great to hear. We have that same excitement. And you mentioned that you were the secretary of the GT production car. Was that your first role within motorsport? Was that a paid or volunteer role?
It was a volunteer role. And it was my first, I consider my first involvement was by helping my brother out as part of his pit crew, and then buying my own car. I effectively ran my own team because we prepared the car ourselves. I used to put it on the trailer and take it to the circuit, unload it, change the brake pads and so on. I did that myself.
Wearing all the hats, team mechanics.
Yes, and I'm really glad I did that because it's given me such an insight to all different aspects. And again, none of it planned, although at that point in time, the team management role was what I was aiming for. Mm-hmm. And I was working in the family business, which was transport. So we had our own depot where we maintained the trucks.
Yep.
And that also is where I kept the race car and was able to do work on it there.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And so, life for us kids was quite often on the road. My parents did a lot of driving themselves. Mm-hmm. And so I was just familiar with being around motors and cars and trucks as I grew up.
Oh, fantastic. So doing a bit of research, a lot of your work that you've done has been overseas. So currently you're based in the Gold Coast. How did you go from Sydney to the Gold Coast to Europe?
Well, it was back in 95. Once I had done, some racing, I was introduced to, at the time, Lisa Brabham's husband, David, was racing in Formula One. And I hadn't really had any exposure to Formula One. I had no intention at all of going to work in Formula One or anything. But because Lisa was pregnant, she ended up not coming to the Adelaide Grand Prix that year. And he asked me if I would help out by being the only Australian driver in the race. It meant he had a lot of commitments for doing interviews and things, and wanted somebody to be there to help him be on time and not be late for things, and asked if I would do it.
How exciting.
So I did. And so I found myself in Simtek's garage for the weekend, and that was my first real exposure to Formula One. And I thought, oh my God, this is just so much higher level than what I'm used to. I want to go and try it.
Around Oran Park, the first Australian Grand Prix in Adelaide, wouldn't it have been in 1996? With Dave Bradham. Wow, going to wow. I'm like blown away.
Yeah. So, and I didn't know anyone in the UK at the time other than, Heather, because she was Scottish and was living in the UK and had come out to do the 12-hour with us. David and Lisa and my parents. They're the only people in the UK that I knew at the time. And so they said, we'll help you find a job over here. Come on over.
Why not? Were you single then? Or what kind of age group was this?
Oh, I was just 30.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. And I had just gotten divorced a year earlier, or a couple of years earlier, actually.
Better.
And so I was free and able to up and move to England.
Oh,
so I did, but I didn't expect to get a job in Formula One straight away, and I didn't really. Oh, actually, I briefly did. I got a job with Pacific Grand Prix, and I moved out to Thetford, out near Snetterton over there, And I lived there for 3 months and worked for the team there and did the 96 Adelaide Grand Prix with them.
Okay.
Well, actually for Hewlett-Packard, they were a sponsor of the team, and I attended Adelaide on the basis that I was there to look after their sponsors.
Great. I love
Look after their guests.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also did some of their press releases. I used to write the press releases for them. So I'd never done that before. So that was a whole new experience for me. But they were such a small team and they had no money. And
so do you like writing? Have you studied copywriting? Or
I hate it. I hate it. But it was a way of getting my foot in the door.
Yeah. Fake it till you make it.
Sorry?
Was it like a fake it till you make it situation?
Yeah. Yes, it was. And I was only with them 3 months because they went down the drain. They actually went into liquidation. Yeah. And so I never got paid. So I knew it was a risk when I moved out there to not get paid, because this had happened to a number of teams in the past where they go down the drain owing staff money.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, if I don't get paid, I'm going to get to know people in the industry and it'll be a foot in the door. And sure enough, it eventually led to a job with Jordan Grand Prix where I did get paid. So,
tell us all about that.
Well, in between Pacific and Jordan, I worked for a sports car team. Mm-hmm. I was the assistant team manager because it was a team based at Didcot in the UK, and the team manager was actually living in America. So he only turned up for the races. He wasn't there between the races. So I organised everything in between. And so that was for the World Sports Car Championship. And we did the Le Mans 24 Hour. And that's an event that I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I got to do that event as like the team coordinator, and really enjoyed that. But again, the car, one of the drivers crashed it at about 3 a.m. in the morning. So then I got a bit of sleep. And, So, and from that role, I went to work for Jordan Grand Prix for the same guy that I had worked for at Pacific Grand Prix.
Ah, there you go. So it is. So
that's how I got the job at Jordan. And so with them, I was, again, looking after sponsors. I wasn't right. They had a full-time press officer, so I didn't have to write press releases, although I did do the test reports. But that's just reporting facts. And so I'm in the commercial department based there at Silverstone, in the factory next to Silverstone, where what are they called now? Aston Martin are based. Now, that Jordan went through a few different iterations of names and is now Aston Martin.
Yeah.
And I used to look after the MasterCard sponsorship of Jordan Grand Prix.
Mm-hmm. So like hosting, so like corporate hosting. So when they came to the event.
Yes, I used to take people on tours of the garage and give them a little chat about the car and
give them a merchandise pack.
Yes, be in Paddock Club and answer their questions about the sport and so on. And, help out with organising travel arrangements and transfers to and from the track and that sort of thing.
Awesome. And how long did you do that role for?
2 years, till 99, end of 99. Yeah. And then I decided I hadn't had enough of the commercial side of things. Mm-hmm. So throughout that time, I was trying to get a job on the more practical side of the team, be it even stuff like putting stickers on the cars is something I felt
a lot easier than getting
sponsors. But none of the teams would entertain that even for a moment. And partly that was because they all share rooms at the events. And if they had one girl in the group, then I'd have to have my own room. And so that would put their costs up.
Yeah.
So they said, look, it's just not practical. And so I still pursued other roles And eventually I was contacted by Formula One management. I had been contacting them, trying to get into the TV broadcast side of things, behind the scenes, not to be on camera, to be behind the scenes, to be a production assistant. And there were just
an array of career changes or just job opportunities that went from legal secretary to behind the scene production assistant.
Yeah, in between these jobs, I used to work and when I very first moved over to the UK, I worked as a driving instructor at the different race schools over there, which is another way of getting to know people. Yeah. So I got to know lots of other instructors. So I worked.
So everything that you did, and everything you did, whether it was volunteer or just getting paid.
Oh well, no, by then I was getting paid.
Yeah, but everything was driving towards like networking and getting into that bigger picture of what you wanted to do. So you started to work at the technical assistant to the race director. How did that roll? You just mentioned the FIA gave you a call. So what were they calling you to ask?
Well, it was actually Formula One management because, they said it was timekeeping guy, the head of timekeeping, that rang me and said, we've got a job that we think you might be suitable for in timekeeping. And I'm thinking, I have no experience in timekeeping. I have no interest in timekeeping, like actually standing there. I had no idea how they timed the F1 races. Yeah. And
it's a quick.
And I thought, why not go and talk to them at least? He said, come and have a chat with us about it. And as soon as I got in there for the interview and he described the role that they needed to fill, I knew it was just perfect for me.
Aww. And tell us about it. What was it?
It was my absolute dream job.
It's sounding like it's everyone's dream job. Tell us.
Well, they were at that time, they were just developing the electronic marshalling system, which is effectively a positioning system. But also it was connected to the lights on the cars for yellow, blue and red flags only. And so I would sit in race control at a laptop that had this positioning screen and all the flag signal controls. And if someone went off track, I would set a yellow zone so that the yellow light would come on in the car as they pass through that zone, and then clear it when the incident had been cleared. I also did all the race messages, which is a communication system they use in Formula One to let all the teams know, like if there is a red flag, what time the session's going to start. And if someone does crash, we used to put a message up who it was and where they'd gone off the track or crashed or whatever, if they've stopped. So that was a communication to the media and everyone as well. I mean, these days, if you watch an F1 race, you see the graphics from race control. They're the messages that I used to do as part of running this system.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask. Like, are you blown away, like 22 years later, how much technology has played a part?
Yeah. And surprisingly, though, they still, as in learning how the system worked, I did work within the timekeeping group and learnt exactly how they do time the F1 races and the software involved to do it. And they're still using the same software now.
Oh, wow.
Which is quite surprising, actually, that there's so many different systems that all talk to one another. And so it's a big jigsaw puzzle. And it's, pretty difficult for them to implement a new system. They've tried a few times, but haven't managed to do it yet.
So you got to travel the world with F1 cars.
Yes, and of course, I was traveling with Formula One management then, because the system was being developed by Formula One management, and it was unreliable when I started working with them. And we were working on getting it to be more reliable. And so the lights are actually covered up on the cars initially because the drivers found them too distracting. And after a year or two, we got it working reliably. And so then the system was handed over to the FIA, and I went with it because I was in race control for all the races operating the system anyway.
Yeah.
So it just meant I kept doing the same job but different colour shirt.
Yeah.
So I thoroughly enjoyed that role.
Yeah.
And
I was like, well, how do you top that? Like, where did you?
no, you can't. That is still the ideal role as far as I'm concerned.
Did you get like sick of traveling, or did you get?
No.
What made you give up that dream job?
Be it a bit of politics and cost cutting and so on, they actually did away with the system.
Yeah. Okay.
So there was no role for me there anymore. And with that, I didn't want to live in England in the bad weather.
Yeah.
So I set about trying to convince my partner to move to Australia, which he eventually did. So we moved to Australia back in 2006 or something. Mm-hmm. And during my time with Jordan and the FIA, I knew Tim Edwards because Tim was working at Jordan when I was working at Jordan.
Yes.
And he called me to say, because he had only been in the role about a year with ProDrive at the time for performance racing, and called and said, I've got a job you might be interested in over here. I know you want to come back to Australia. Yeah.
What was that role? Yeah.
So then I went to work for what was Ford Performance Racing, now Tickford.
Yeah. So you went from cold England to very cold Melbourne. Yeah.
Well, I went cold Melbourne, but it's still, I worked it out 10 degrees warmer all year round than what it is in England.
Beautiful.
That's an improvement. Even though now that I'm on the Gold Coast, I think, no, there wasn't really an improvement.
No, that's right. And so what was your role? What did Tim Edwards offer you at ProDrive?
Well, I was initially the team coordinator doing all the travel arrangements primarily. Mm-hmm. And that kind of, Tim knew that I wanted to sort of advance a bit there, and I enjoyed the data analysis side of things. I had learnt to use Pi on my laptop and did a bit of data work in between events. I quite enjoy data analysis of any type. And so I started doing a bit of data for the development series team, and then I was the team manager of the development series team.
Yay. So you finally reached the goal of being a team manager.
Not for long, though. I was only there in that role for about a year, and then moved on again.
Yeah, so tell us, what does being a team manager mean? What kind of tasks are involved in that?
Well, team manager, is responsible for the travel arrangements. Just make sure everybody's going to be in the right place at the right time, be it the trucks or the mechanics flying. It's
Is
also
that really hard, and does it go to plan every race meeting or all?
No, I actually found it more complicated to do that type of role in Australia than what it was in F1, because in F1 it's all quite rigid and it's all planned well in advance and it doesn't change. Whereas in Australia, they'll change. I don't know how it is now because I've not had any involvement for many years now, but at that time, they're changing the timetable 2 days before the event starts.
Really?
Yeah. So, I'd have to leave printing everybody's timetable to the very last minute because there'd be changes right up till the day everyone's leaving the factory to go to the event.
Wow.
Which quite frustrating.
Yeah, and people missing flights. I'd imagine they miss lots of flights and things like that.
No. They're all trained pretty well. Yeah, they need.
Not in your clock.
It's a matter of making sure everybody's got the right information.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do your job properly as a team manager, you really shouldn't get many questions at a race event because everyone should know what they need to know and be able to do their role efficiently. And team manager also is responsible for sporting aspects, which is how it was my interest in that side of things as well. Know the sporting regulations that you can just guide the rest of the team as to what they've got to do when in the unusual situations, like when there's a red flag and that sort of thing.
And obviously having that background of being a race official and working in that capacity,
yes,
it gave you that skill set to be able to, really pick through the big book of regulations and be able to decipher it for
And I've never intended to learn the regulations that well, but being in that role with Charlie for 5 years, he used to often talk instead of using just the article number rather than explaining the rule that he's talking about. Yeah. He'd say, under 48.3, blah, blah, blah. And so I learnt it that way.
Yeah.
And also it was so precise. I mean, I had the best teacher in learning how to apply the sporting regulations in Charlie Whiting and Herbie Blash. I sat alongside both of them for all of that time.
I'm surprised supercars haven't called you up, Gwenda.
I tried hard to get a job with supercars, yeah.
So after Pro Drive, what happened?
After Pro Drive, I decided to take a bit of a break from motorsport. Mm-hmm. And so I went and worked more along the data side of things for a company that had nothing to do with motorsport. But to just keep in touch with that sporting regulation side, I got my steward's license and became
you just couldn't keep away, could you? You just couldn't keep away.
So I did some events down there in Victoria for what was then CAMS. Mm-hmm. As a steward, got experience that way because a lot of the work I did for Charlie was to gather information. This is after the sessions. Well, it's one thing to run the sessions live. It's another thing then between the events to go back through the data and see exactly what happened when. And so when there were stewards' hearings, I would gather the information that was needed by the stewards and explain it all to the stewards. Some of it was technical with the timing system. They're not expected to know how the timing system worked. And so I quite enjoyed that aspect of the role as well. Mm-hmm. So I can use that in being a steward myself.
Yeah.
So, this is all part of the jigsaw puzzle.
All the jigsaw puzzle, yes. So after that, so you got your steward's license, you couldn't keep away. You joined the board of directors with the Australian Motorsport Foundation. What was that?
I was their operations manager. I wasn't on the board. But
was that as a volunteer role as well?
Sorry?
Was that a volunteer role as well?
No, that was a full-time job. And I was based in the CAMS office in Melbourne. And that involved dealing with the karting drivers that they supported. Mm-hmm. So they had 10 drivers that they were already supporting in karting and 4 in Formula Ford. Mm-hmm. So it was my job to liaise with all of those 14 drivers and, give them a bit of guidance, a bit of what you do now.
Yeah.
And in that, whilst I was in that role, I came across Joey Mawson, who was the only one in karting who was already competing overseas. And he was doing the World Championship. And I'd never met him or his family. And I took a closer look at the results of all the sessions that he was doing in the World Championships, because it's all available on the internet.
Yes.
And I discovered that he was doing his fastest lap in qualifying. He would do his 3 quickest sectors on the one lap, which is actually quite unusual for drivers, especially young ones.
I was going to say, especially with the young age, yeah.
And so I thought, well, this kid has got some talent, because he didn't get the opportunity to do test days because he didn't have the budget.
No.
And he couldn't have new tyres all the time. And all the drivers that he was racing against had unlimited tyres and unlimited test days and were just on the track all the time.
Yeah.
So in qualifying, he tended to be further back, and in the heats, and by the end, he always got into the final, mm-hmm. and usually up to the top 10. And some of them, he actually came 4th in the World Championship before he moved into cars. And he was racing against people like Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
So he did actually beat Searle for one round of the World Championships. So I thought he's the one who deserves support because he was doing it tough over there, living with family in a tiny little apartment, and he was only 16.
Yep.
And as my part of my role with the Australian Motorsport Foundation was to support him and look after him to some degree. And then I was made redundant from the Australian Motorsport Foundation.
Yeah.
And so on a voluntary basis, I continued to support Joey and his family, and Tom Warwick and Jeff Morgan, who were on the board of the Australian Motorsport Foundation. There was going to be a change in structure, lots of changes, and so they actually resigned from the board along with a few other people and started their own company called Podium, which actually was an acronym. And they gave me work like as a contractor, and they paid my travel costs for me to go and support Joey. So they continued to support Joey financially, like to move from karting into cars.
Yeah.
So he did the French F4 Championship and then the German F4 Championship, and it was I attended a lot of the German F4 races with Joey.
Did you move back over there, or were you flying back and forward?
No, I was going back and forward. I did 3 trips in 1 year because I still lived in Melbourne, and I was still working for a paid job in Melbourne, nothing to do with motorsport, but going off for a couple of weeks at a time.
Beautiful.
To the races in Germany. And, it was actually a lot of fun. It wasn't particularly good for me financially, but I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Like we said, we all do this for love.
Yes. And it was great of Jeff and Tom and all the others that were part of the Podium group to continue supporting Joey, because they kept going for a few years until, unfortunately, Tom Warwick very suddenly passed away. Jeff kept it going for a while. And I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Joey now. You knew him from karting. And, of course, he's just won the Australian Drivers' Championship twice in a row. Mm-hmm. So it's...
I think he's one of Australia's most underrated drivers. So all of these...
He's got the talent without a doubt.
All these supercar teams looking for drivers. Trying to get into
he doesn't have the Australian profile or experience in those types of cars, but he's pretty adaptable. He did the 12-hour this year in the Audi, and he went from last to second in his stint in the car. So, he can clearly drive.
I have no doubt he will get there. He's very committed to that goal and aspiration to get to supercar. So I give it 2 more years, I reckon. We'll see. So you're doing consultancy for motorsport. After that, what else have you done? Gone to the F2s. How did you get involved in F2s?
Well, once again, it's Charlie Whiting actually rang me one day. I was staying at my sister's place in Melbourne because by that time I was based most of my time in Europe. And
was your partner still with you, Gwenda? I need to ask. The one that you brought back from England, is he still with you? Was he flying back?
No, we ended up going our separate ways in 2016. And that was while I was doing a lot of these trips to England. And so then I didn't bother coming back to Australia in between events. I just stayed over there. And I'm still close to Lisa and David Brabham, and so I stay with them sometimes, or the team Van Amersfoort Racing that Joey was with are based in the Netherlands, and they would have houses that the staff would live in. So sometimes I would have a room in one of those houses for a bit. I was a bit of, no man's land for a little bit there when that long-term relationship split up. And
it sounds bliss to me. I'm going, and the problem with that is
I did actually enjoy that too. I enjoyed the freedom it gave me. I'd go off to Italy for a week here and there, or I'd, be doing things in England. And so when I was in England, I'd work as a driving instructor again. I'd do the contract to, for people like Mercedes-Benz and BMW on their corporate days. And that was reasonable money. So I'd just do that in between time to earn money to live on. And but when Joey was in Formula 3, FIA Formula 3, he didn't do very well. And part of it was some of the stewarding decisions that went against him that were really pretty poor. And I had evidence of it being pretty poor. And I emailed Charlie Whiting and said, this is what's happening in Formula 3.
Just take it to the
wants talented young drivers to come through, and yet these decisions go against them. And now he'll lose that support of podium. Yeah. Those guys putting in the money, they're going to say they did stop.
Yeah.
And that's why I did email Charlie. And Charlie rang me back and he said, have you got any evidence of this? Because I've had so many complaints about that category and the decisions being made. And I said, yes, I've been taking photos of the decisions and things. And I said, yep. And so he said, meet me at Heathrow Airport and show me what's going on in that category. So I did. And I left it at that. I didn't think anything was going to come of it. But he said, so what are you doing next year? I said, I don't know yet. I'm back in Australia. Anyway, a few months later, he rang me and said, I've got a job that I'd like you to do if you're willing to move back over here again and live here. What is it? He said, I know. He explained, was looking after F2 and GP3 from a sporting perspective for the FIA, for him. And so I jumped at it. I said, yeah.
As your manager. Just go.
Yeah. Yeah, a bit, although the structure's completely different over there. Yeah. So, but I was specifically FIA, not the promoter.
Yep.
So I wasn't category manager. There was somebody else that was category manager. Mm-hmm. So I was closely involved with stewards, did all their paperwork throughout the events. Mm-hmm. But there I had a direct involvement in the sporting regulations for those categories too, because having done my apprenticeship under Charlie, he used to get me to do a lot of that sort of thing for him, that groundwork, give it to him to review, and then he'd distribute it. Yeah.
And then? Like, there's more.
Well, not really. Because, actually, at Charlie's request, I did the International Stewards Seminar because the FIA on a global level is sort of changing the way they appoint stewards and stewards licensing system, because there are a lot of people that didn't really have much of a background in the sport that did progress to a high level of stewarding through different ways. And they brought in a new rule that in order to be a steward for the FIA, as different to the ASNs in each of the countries, you have to do the International Stewards Seminar, which involves an assessment after the seminar, which involves questions, multiple choice questions that has to be done in a certain, only 20 or 30 minutes is all the time you've got to answer these questions. And also they describe a scenario of an incident and you have to write a decision. And you have to get a distinction or above in the assessment to be able to do international events as a steward. So Charlie asked me to do that seminar so that I could get the appropriate steward's license.
Yep.
And so I did that in 2019, actually, and I got the required score of a distinction. And a few weeks later, Charlie died of that heart attack. And everything fell flat after that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you're working in airspeeder now then? What?
Yeah, that's really unusual. Airspeeder is flying cars.
Oh, wow.
They're kind of like a giant drone.
Yeah.
And it's completely new development. And in order to speed up development of the vehicles, they want to race them. Wow. So they needed somebody that could come up with some sporting regulations for them and run their races. Now, I mean, it's small scale and there's no public there or anything. So, but it's just in those really early stages. So I've only been doing that a few months. So that's what I'm currently working on.
And you're back in Australia, as we mentioned.
Yes. Yeah, well, part of also, though, when I last left England, I thought I was going back there in a couple of months. It was
COVID.
Just before Christmas.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit. And so I didn't want to go and be in England during lockdown and all that. So I thought, no, I'll just stay in Australia. And I moved up here to the Gold Coast. And I absolutely love living here. So I've decided I want to stay here. So,
fantastic. That is such an amazing story. I just love it. I keep talking. I keep forgetting to talk because I'm just like in awe just sitting here. Anyone that wants to watch the video, you can see that I'm just like, oh, okay, I've got to talk now. But how do you wrap up your career? Like, what do you say to people?
Oh, that's a really tough one. I actually avoid talking about it because it's too complicated.
You know what I mean? Like, people go, oh, like I'm a mechanical engineering or a data analyst, but you've kind of done everything. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, I do have experience in lots of different areas of the sport. And I feel that is an asset, particularly when it comes to race management, like the whole sporting side of the sport.
Yeah, and I still feel I want to ask the question of what's next? Like, what's next chapter going to look like? I mean, we're all coming out of COVID. Got beautiful Gold Coast. Like, are you looking to get back into Australian motorsports, or are you over?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think, I mean, it's not that long since I decided that I want to stay in Australia because, like, when we first had all those lockdowns with COVID, I thought it would only last a few months, and that turned into a couple of years. And so it's only a year ago that I decided I'd stay here. So, but my involvement now is actually just a couple of weeks ago, I became secretary of the Norwell Racers Club because that's the nearest track to me. And, of course, I know Paul Morris from back in when he was racing Formula 4.
I was going to say, he would have been racing with your brother or even with yourself.
Exactly. And, in fact, Paul and my brother Ron raced in what was known then as Formula Brabham together then, both with Phoenix Motorsport. So, yeah, we go back a long way.
So you're back, really.
Yeah, and I've stayed in touch with Paul throughout the years.
Yeah.
And so, I spend a bit of time there at the Norwell Motorplex.
Fantastic.
So who knows what will come of that?
Yeah.
There's never what's around the corner. I mean, all the best opportunities that I've had have just come up out of the blue.
Yeah, and I guess, that was the next thing is, like, there's someone who's aspiring to do everything that you've achieved is so many different things. Do you have
I just like to think I recognise an opportunity and go for it when I do see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the sheer fact that you did have to move overseas, I think, like, that's the biggest thing that we have here, that we're hearing, like, with a lot of the girls aspiring to work in F1's. Obviously, there's no team here, so if they're wanting to do that, they are having to move overseas, like our drivers, at such a young age. We get to drive, whether it's mechanical engineering, data engineering, all those social media, anything, like, they've kind of got to go anywhere between, like, that 15 and 22 years of age to try and get their foot into the door. And I think what you've mentioned 100 times, it's just like around about networking, being in the right time, right place. I mean, we don't all have Brabhams as best friends, but just consistency, like you said about you called the FI over and over, calling, made contact with Paul Morris. You're not scared to pick up those phone and to make those actual contacts or re-engagements and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I would need to have you back on like in about another 2 years' time where we're doing like episode 250 or something. Gwenda, what has happened in the last 18 months? We've running supercars by then.
Who knows? Yeah, that would be fun.
Oh, fantastic. Well, good. I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story with us. I'm so motivated.
I thank you for your interest in it. I guess I'm a bit shy about it all, really.
No, we want to hear it. And I'm sure our listeners will be going, wow, as well. So congratulations on such a fantastic career to date. Again,
thank you.
Thank you for coming on to share your story. I wish you all the very best. Again, I will be definitely watching to see on LinkedIn what's the next step that's coming up. And hopefully if I come up to Norwell, we can catch up for a coffee.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, let me know if you're coming up. That would be really good.
Thank you for joining me onto the podcast.
All the best with what you're doing with training your young drivers too.
Thank you. And I look forward to hopefully catching up with you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, thanks everyone for listening to this week's show. I really hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. Now, remember, all the show notes with the links and the specials mentioned in today's show are available over at motivatetraining.com.au. If you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could head to iTunes or Stitcher, type in Motorsport Coaching, subscribe, and leave us a review. Each week, I'll read them out and you'll go into a monthly draw to win a fantastic prize. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at motivatetraining.com.au or head over to our Facebook page at Motivate to Tea. Until next time, take care.